Hello, tonight we discuss how to make a highbrow educational wine show.
There's going to be a fair bit of censorship on this one, isn't there? A touch.
Winemaker Fergus tries to deny all the rumours.
Well, Richard, the owner, now calls us the Elias Tag Team. It's this idea that the pair of us go around intimidating everyone else until we get our way, which is not the case. We're actually really lovely people.
And I try to sum up everything you need to know about growing grapes, something that people dedicate their entire lives to, in just 5 minutes. Time to get ready to drink along with the online wine tasting club.
Okay, good evening and welcome to our very special pre-launch edition of the Online Wine Tasting Club. So we have done a few online tastings previously with lots of little bottles and fun things and all that kind of stuff, but we've decided to make it a little bit different. We've developed the concept. So why is that exciting? What are we doing now?
Well, I'd imagine for you it's quite exciting because you're not going to get repetitive strain injury from screwing up bottles and putting caps on them. But from the point of view of people at home, you know, we've had some trouble. Loads of people from around the country have wanted to get their families involved, and posting glass around the country means it might break, you know, and sometimes, to be honest, it never arrived because, you know, you weren't in when, well, that wasn't much of a problem during much of lockdown, but yeah, if you know what the problems with deliveries are like. So we thought, what if we could make something that fitted through your letterbox and was really, really lightweight? So so that's what we've come up with here, and to be honest, we think it's pretty cool. We haven't seen anything else like this.
Quite like it.
No, not really. So, and it means that we can get get things down to quite an affordable price point that we think so. So starting from Friday the 18th, we'll be opening up launch day. At last. Finally. And yeah, so from Friday you'll be able to sign up to one of our 2 series of tastings, and once a month this will drop through your letterbox with prices starting from just £20 for an individual or £32 for a 125ml couples portion, just like you've got tonight.
That's a tasty amount of wine, isn't it?
That's not bad. It's £16 a person, which I think is a lot cheaper than going to the pub.
Exactly, if you're allowed to.
If you're allowed to.
So the way we've said it is we're gonna have 2 slightly different levels, and it's really wherever you want to be on your wine journey at the time, and you can dip in and out and do whatever you fancy. But we're going to have our Discoverers level, which is where we're just going to get into a country or a region and talk about the wines and try and find some things that are a little bit different. We've then got our Adventurers level, where we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive and we'll follow a theme. So we might do cool climate wines or island wines or wines from volcanic soil, and we can let Alex get maybe a little bit more geeky than he would otherwise be allowed to. But yeah, tonight we've decided what we'll do is we're going to do a little bit of a hybrid. So we're going to have a couple of wines at the beginning from New Zealand, which is going to be at our Discoverers level, and then we're going to come a little closer to home to England, and that's going to be more of our Adventurers level. So it's a little bit different because we do a white and a red, and then we go back to 3 whites, which generally we wouldn't. But what we can do is we look at this as 2 different tastings. So after we've done the New Zealand red, we'll take a little sip of water, we'll cleanse our palates, and then we'll move on to the second half of our tasting.
What we should also probably just say at the moment, because it's kind of important to get these things set out from the start, but we don't take money or take free wine from the winemakers in order to promote them to you. We pick the wines independently because we think that's really important. It shouldn't just be like an advertorial or, you know, one of those little market stands that pops up in the supermarket. These are things.
I will take free wine if it's good though.
Well, okay, yeah, I mean, personally, if anyone wants to send us free wines, I'm all ears. I mean,
but it does not guarantee you a slot in
the
box.
No, absolutely, yes. No. So that's it's really important that we give you straight up, honest advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And honest opinions are great in wine, because if I love a wine and you don't love a wine, that doesn't matter. There's so many wines out there, you know, because if we all loved the same, we'd have one red and one white, and that would be a bit boring. And obviously, me and Alex always agree. Never agree. No. Sometimes agree.
We often, but often don't as well. You'll probably see more of that tonight.
Exactly. Sometimes, you know, I'm right, and sometimes Alex has a different opinion from me.
Aha, yeah. Anyway, look, let's stop messing about. New Zealand. Jamie, I can't help but notice that on the floor you appear to have a couple of pieces of fruit.
Well, you know.
Why?
It's 2 of my 5 a day, isn't it?
That's fair.
Well, so, New Zealand, they make a little bit of a Sauvignon Blanc. So these are what, you know, some of the flavours you might find. We're trying to get a gooseberry, but no gooseberries in season. We could have had a yoghurt with gooseberry and elderflower, all those flavours in there. But that's what it is.
I'd have felt like a right idiot holding a yoghurt, to be honest. But there we are. Yeah.
Exactly. But we're not going to do any Sauvignon today. Not because we don't love it and we think that, you know, there's some amazing Sauvignon Blanc made in New Zealand. That's what it made its name on. But what we want to do is you can get lots of Sauvignon all over the place. So what we want to do is try and get a little wine in front of you that you might not have had before, that you might not have seen, and you can have a little nose it and go, yeah, I love that, I need 27 gallons of it, or that's not really my kind of thing. But now we know that that's not my kind of thing. And that's what's really important about these boxes is you can try the wine.
You don't have to buy a whole bottle of it.
You don't have to have a whole bottle of it. And if you love it, that's amazing. But if you don't, when you're then next to an independent wine shop or in a restaurant, you can look down the list and go, I know that style. Not my kind of thing.
That's cool.
And that helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, and hopefully there'll be more wines that you love than you don't. Otherwise, we're not doing our jobs right. But the great thing is that these will be dropping through, and you're going to expand your palette of wine so much over the course of a year. I mean, 5 wines dropping through your letterbox. That's 60 different wines over the course of a year.
He makes wine and does maths.
Oh, well, I can do maths. I can.
Look at that.
Oh, dearie me. Actually, don't talk to my school teachers. They wouldn't say the same. But I'm getting distracted.
We
so
kind of do that a bit, don't we?
We do.
Sorry.
England.
Oh,
Second half,
that's
we are coming back to England, and you might not think, I don't think any of us really thought that England was going to be a place which made particularly good wines for many years. It didn't. And then, you know, a lot of people know that sparkling wines have really taken off here, and there are now more than 500 vineyards across the country. But what we're going to look at tonight is what has always been the sort of the weaker sibling here, which is still wines. And you know, the big challenge for England is, can it make still wines that compete with the rest of the world?
Yeah. You and your English wines.
I do like English wines.
Okay. We need to start. We need to start drinking.
Yeah.
So, because we know that New Zealand has good weather. It makes good wine. It makes delicious wine. There's lots here. We would have loved to have gone there to hang out because it is beautiful, but we can't. So what we did, we thought we'd take you on a virtual visit, take a little tour, meet the winemakers, and have a little bit of fun.
So I think this is a good time for you now to crack open wine number 1 if you haven't done so already. While we're drinking this, we're going to have a little film. Any questions you've got, pop them into the Zoom. There's a big button that says Q&A, and you can just comment along in the chat. So it'd be great to see all of you getting involved, because the more you get involved, to be honest, the more fun everyone has.
Exactly. Hugely important. Have one open. Don't wait for us.
New Zealand. With its islands stretching around 1,000 miles from north to south, it's home to some of the most dramatic landscapes in the world. Towering mountains, majestic glaciers, lakes, beaches, coasts, mist-cloaked valleys, and quite a few sheep. I mean, just look at it. This leads to an incredible variety of tiny pockets of weather that mean different things grow well. So why do we only hear about one grape? In comparison, Italy is around the same size, but has 500 grape varieties. We had to dig deeper. For wine number 1, we've headed to the boutique region of Nelson, the warmest point of the South Island and just the west of Marlborough. Herman Seyfried was one of the pioneers who spotted the potential to make premium wines here and started planting back in 1973. His Seyfried family estate is still family run to this day. Nelson enjoys a unique microclimate as it's sheltered on 3 sides by mountains, cutting it off from the rest of the island. With the north side open to the Tasman Bay, it has cool nights and warm days, making it ideal for aromatic grapes like Grüner Veltliner, Austria's signature grape, which is what we're tasting right now.
But the early days in Nelson, I remember it quite clearly, 1st of January 71. The idea was to grow a little bit wine and then make wine, sell a few bottles, drink a few bottles, and hopefully enjoy what you're doing.
I think he just saw opportunity. There's no rules, the climate was good, things have just gone from there.
So Mum and Dad both very hard-working individuals and really had huge aspirations as a young married couple. So when us children came along, I guess we just kept up with whatever they were doing. They had, dreams of making wine and starting to share wines around the world. Having us at their side didn't hold them back at all.
Before they were at school, they were in the vineyard with us. They were in a cot in the winery while we were bottling wine at night. They were just there the whole time in a playpen amongst the bottling line.
Family holidays were loading up the boot of the old Cortina and going door knocking at every bottle shop and pub that we could find in the South Island and selling cases of wine. That was our youth.
We didn't get much financial help back then. The bank wouldn't lend us money. It was very difficult. The people that you thought would support you with what varieties would grow, they said, you'll never grow grapes in Nelson, go to Hawke's Bay, go to Gisborne. So yeah, we did have some uphill battles to start.
During the 60s and 70s, when Nelson was, and still is today, a big hop producing region, Dad had a professor at university in Germany who said that wherever hops grow well, vinifera grapevines will do well. And so that's one of the reasons that he felt that Nelson would be a great place to plant his first vines.
We've got vineyards across a number of terroirs. We are situated here in Appleby as home base, if you like. The best part about Nelson probably is the sunshine hours, but also the opportunity to have vineyards across a number of soil types. So in terms of growing grapes, we think it's a great place to be.
Doing vintages overseas, as much as anything, I think it makes you appreciate how good New Zealand wine is and what we have here.
A lot of the things that they're doing in Europe to me are very, very old world, and that's exactly what they are, but also very old school. As a New Zealand winemaker, you can try anything you like, you can do whatever you like.
My name is Herman Seifert and I'm in New Zealand, in Nelson, in sunny Nelson. We start producing also Grüne Veltliner, what's a native grape variety to Austria. And we have made it ever since, and we enjoy it very much. It's a very nice food wine. So, to enjoy it, we're not in the vineyard today, we're relaxing on the shore of Holloshore Island. Thank you. Bye. Cheers.
It's thanks to people like Herman who stood by these grapes against the trend just because they loved them that New Zealand has still got so many interesting wines for us still to discover.
What a place. So that's the first wine. And I've been very, very lucky that I've met the Siegfried family a couple of times, both in the States and in the UK. Lovely, lovely people. So it's great when lovely people are making lovely wine.
It helps, doesn't it?
It does indeed, it does indeed. But remember, everybody's taste is different. You may find flavours like citrus fruits, lime, lemon, grapefruit, whatever's on his plate over there. But what I felt that makes Gruner a really, really cool wine is that you look carefully, you might spot some of these savoury notes, a little bit of white pepper, those herbs, which is what makes it such a good pairing with food. And it really has this beautiful, beautiful zinging acidity that you take a little sip and it makes your mouth water. But, as always, don't worry if you don't find these notes, if you don't agree. We don't agree with each other. I say it all the time, but most of the time we have a difference of opinion, and you'll probably see a little bit of that later on today.
I think you will, yeah.
But all in all, we hope we find this wine interesting, well balanced, and excellent value.
It's time to have a bit of a quick look at some of the questions and comments that you guys have. So, what do you guys think of the Gruner? Is it up there with your favourite New Zealand Grüne Veltliners?
So yeah, there's little notes in there, and people have mentioned that there's a little taste of dessert wine, which I feel you've got this, it's that fruitiness, and we sometimes mention don't get that fruitiness confused with sweetness. So if you taste the wine, it's definitely dry, but you have a lot of these fruity things, these nectarines and pears that you might associate with it being something sweet. You know, people are talking great acidity, it's zippy, it's got this tartness about it. And I think what's great is you're going to see there's lots of different notes in this wine. It's a very, very interesting, fun bottle of wine. So I hope you're all enjoying. Cheers.
I think it's fantastic. I'm really impressed with that. We've done a few Austrian Grüner Veltliners over the series of our Tring winery tastings, and that's quite a different expression of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, Caroline, producer, have you got any questions for us?
No questions yet.
No questions yet. Okay, but people generally enjoying it?
Yes, generally enjoying it. Some raisins, white pepper, citrus.
I've heard someone said it was almost like a dessert wine. I absolutely get that. Is there a bit of sweetness on it?
So, as I just mentioned, the wine itself, zero sugar in there. There's no residual sugar on it, but it's those kind of flavours that remind you of something being a little bit sweet. But we could talk about Gruner all day, every day. I was thinking maybe we should do a little bit of the wine news.
The wine news.
I kind of think going on in the world.
Yeah, we definitely need to have an intro sequence for this, don't we? But anyway, each week we thought we'd have a look at some of the kind of hot topics in wine and give you our take on them. Frankly, this being 2020, there's quite a few things going on. It's hard to know where to start. Pandemics, wine regions on fire, etc.
Yeah, but there have been a couple of things that stood out, and it's perhaps not the ones that you might think about. Now, I saw something on the internet the other day.
Oh, God, we don't want to know about what you've seen on the internet, do we?
No, not that sort of internet thing. So I saw an advert on Facebook, which is obviously the best place to get your news or fake news. No way. Anyway, it was advertising something that you put into your glass of wine so you don't get hangovers from the chemicals called sulfites.
Sulfite? God, it's episode number 1 and James is already talking about chemistry.
It's not chemistry. We're talking about hangovers and con artists, and that's what's important.
I think that's honestly, a pretty good
You
name.
know, a lot of people realise that you can talk about something with a scary name, blame the bad things on it, and then say, oh, it can be fixed if you just buy this.
Is that a bit like people selling you tinfoil hats to put on your head so the mobile phone signals don't give you a virus?
Exactly. Did you not bring yours with you?
Well, sadly, I didn't spend £100 on that one. But there we go, you know.
That's where the problem lies, exactly. But we've all seen the things on bottles of wine that says contains sulfite. It's written on the wine bottles. It sounds scary, but they're natural preservatives. They occur naturally in wine. They're in many foods to stop them going off. You get your hangovers from drinking alcohol and not drinking enough water. Yes, absolutely. There are some people who have sulfite sensitivities and can be allergic to sulfites. It's one of the allergens that they have to put on the restaurant menus and all that kind of stuff. But you consume more sulfites from eating jam on toast than you do in most bottles of red wine.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the things they warn you about in the winery. Don't breathe huge amounts of this in. But I did a bit of digging when I saw that Jamie's found this advert. And I was like, what is it that they're selling? And it's to deal with the chemicals. They're selling you hydrogen peroxide, which is not just quite a dangerous chemical, you know, a pretty toxic thing used to clean things, way worse than sulfites. But it turns out it's actually illegal to sell them for putting into food and drinks because side effects include, and I should put on my best American accent, side effects may include gut irritation, perforation, breathing problems, and even death.
Yeah.
No accents.
I was sure we discussed accents before we started here.
Yeah.
But you know, to be fair, with those options, I think I'd prefer to take the hangover. So top tip, perhaps avoid hydrogen peroxide in your wine.
Yeah, not a bad tip there.
So anyway, moving on. On an interesting note, the earliest wine factory has been discovered in Lebanon. It's 2,600 years old, so a little bit older than your wine.
Bit older than Tring Winery, yep.
So, you know, but the grapes would come in on top and people would just foot crush them. The juice, it then drains down to the lower levels and it goes into the clay jars and it ferments, and this is how we're making our wine. It ferments, it ages.
It's funny because it seems to have come back round again now, doesn't it? Like aging wines and fermenting in clay jars. Like they call them Kevri, they call them amphora. There's all sorts of names, but
exactly. But this, by no qualm. This is not the earliest evidence of wine. It goes back thousands and thousands of years. There's been older jars found. There's been older kind of
caves in Armenia and places like that.
Exactly, but it's really interesting to find somewhere that it was actually being made on a relatively commercial scale,
pretty
having
big
a factory.
Scale. Absolutely. Anyway, I think it might be time, to think about how some of those ancient cultures actually knew just as well how to have a good time as we did. So now I found a new wine today, and it's perhaps not from somebody you wouldn't expect. It's from Taco Bell, and they call it, Jalapeno Noir.
Jalapeno Noir. I guess that's going to have some spicy notes to it.
I hate you. Oh, God. Surely by now it must be time to go back to New Zealand and find out about wine number 2, which is a Merlot. So do open that one up and get pouring it into your glass.
Yeah, any comments you have, don't forget to pop them in the Q&A box. The more interactive this gets, the more fun we have. Are you pouring again, sir?
Yeah, I think I must be.
So, as he pours, I'm going to have him multitask here.
I'm a man, that should be problematic, shouldn't
Alex, what do you think of Merlot, if you can get it out of the bag?
Well, I mean, I love it, but I
don't talk about the movie.
Yeah, I know, that's the thing. What movie? Do you mean Sideways?
Yes, not Sideways.
Oh dear. So yeah, this one stupid line has given the whole grape varietal a totally unfair reputation. Merlot is the same grape that you get in some of the most incredibly wonderful wines from Bordeaux. If you want to go out and spend a bit of money, you can do much worse than finding a 2013 Petrus. That is 100% Merlot, 130%.
That's a lot of Merlot.
Yeah. So it's 100% Merlot. It's from Pomerol, and it costs more than £1,600. So I don't think it can be that bad a grape.
Okay. We're going off at a tangent again. We always do this. We go off to the middle of nowhere that we don't need to be. Let's go back to where we were, and we're going to go across the Cook Strait that separates New Zealand's South Island to the north, up to the north, and we will find out a little bit about wine number 2.
Sounds good.
Hawke's Bay, home to more than 100 producers. As the name suggests, it's also a bay, so it's sheltered. But contrary to what you might think, being north of Nelson, it's considerably warmer. In fact, it has a similar climate to Bordeaux, the other home of Merlot. The warmth makes it particularly good for making rich red wines. Now within the region is the Gimblett Gravel section, a former riverbed with plenty of gravel and sand as the name suggests. This gives great drainage, which makes the vine work hard, giving more concentrated flavours. Wine number 2 is from another family-run wine estate, St Clair. Neil and Judy Ibbotson had been growing grapes for other wineries since 1978, before they took the leap into making their own in 1994. Their vineyards are split between Hawke's Bay and Marlborough on the South Island, where they make, yes, you guessed it, Sauvignon. But theirs is a cut above what you find in the supermarkets and pubs and is really worth trying out. But we had a few questions about this wine and thought, who better to ask than the guy who actually makes it? We asked their winemaker Hamish whether he'd learnt winemaking at school or through practical experience.
So no, I don't have any formal V&O qualifications. Winemaking is very much, there's the technical side of it, which anybody can study and learn, but it's really the apprenticeship of the palate. That's the biggest part of whether you're a capable winemaker or not.
After a long chat, we thought it was time to pour a glass and ask Hamish all about this wine.
The customer is getting a real treat because Hawke's Bay fruit, especially Gimblett Gravel's fruit, which this is from, it's highly coveted. We were very, very lucky to get Grape Land up there. The tannin structure is much better from the Hawke's Bay. You don't get the tomato stalk green characters that we typically will get down here in Marlborough in all but the hottest years. This has a bit of barrel into it as well, and You can see that what hasn't gone into barrel has been steeped in high quality oak in the tank. And we're using that oak as a podium for the fruit to be promoted on. And that's the way we approach all of our oak regime. It's the oak's there to support the fruit. It shouldn't be the other way around.
I feel, so much about wine is having the balance right. And if it's balanced, you're going to do well. And, I think this wine has got rich fruit. It's ripe. It's got that little bit of jamminess, but it's still got the acidity and the balance. And, it's quaffable and delicious. It's just a really well-made drop of juice. Yeah. But once again, when you talk about Merlot, New Zealand isn't the first place that probably springs to mind when you're in the UK.
It's our point of difference, I think, as a wine producing country. There's a lot of countries that are growing and producing fantastic expressions of Merlot, but we don't want our Merlots to be tasting like Australian produced Merlots. That's their gig. The Merlots that are coming out of New Zealand tend to have that little bit more acidity and a little bit more backbone. There's a lot of wines being produced in New Zealand that are amazing expressions, but I can't afford to be drinking a $60 New Zealand bottle of Merlot at the weekend unless it's a special occasion. Yeah,
and I think for us the Origin range does really, really well for having those the Merlots, and we have the Riesling here, and it's absolutely spectacular. Yeah. But it's at a price point that you can go, give this a go. If you don't love it, come back and see me, and we'll fix it. But people are willing to hedge their bets at the price point that it comes in at, which is fantastic. And that's where a lot of wines need to be. That people need to be happy when it's a bit different to take the risk off the shelf. And this range does that absolutely spectacularly, and I think it really, really over delivers for the money that people were being asked to pay for it.
That's exactly the right word. I was just about to mention it. Things that Neil aspires for. He wants the wines to over deliver. We've often been told by distributors that we should be lifting our prices up on the reserve tiers. Some of the suggestions have been taking things like the Chardonnay that might retail, for example, here in New Zealand, retails for about $30, and they're suggesting that could be getting as much as 60 or 70. But Neil's not interested in chasing few bottle sales at high price. He'd rather have the customers happy, and as long as everybody's making their margins, then don't be too greedy type thing.
Yeah, and I think that's important, because when you get to that price, you start getting into special occasion bottles, and the bottle gets held and held and held and held and held and held and forgot about, and then it never gets drunk, and it just disappears into the back of someone's wine cellar. I feel wine needs to be opened and drunk and shared. Yes, if you're buying a case of something as an investment, that's all well and good, and that's a different style of wine and wine buying. I feel you should always be buying a bottle of wine that you can afford to open with your mates and enjoy it. And that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yep, you've nailed it. Yep.
Yeah. No, perfect. So I know you have got a million and one things going on at the vineyard right now. So thank you very much for your time. Is there anything that you want to chuck the people who are listening to us need to know about New Zealand wine? If you've got a final top tip about St Clair or New Zealand wine, what would that be? Apart from drink all of it because it's great.
Okay, keep an eye out for the 2020 vintage. It has been an absolute stunner. Hopefully this particular 2020 vintage will be memorable because the fruit quality was incredible. Every single variety. Usually there's a weakling variety every vintage where it doesn't quite perform as well as it could have or should have. But this year, every single variety that we pulled in, we were allowed to get it exactly to the level of ripeness we wanted. The fruit was absolutely squeaky clean. I've never seen fruit as clean as what we had this year. So keep an eye out for 2020s, and that's multiple regions as well. Nobody really had a bad vintage this year. So
it's amazing. So what you're doing, to summarise, you're promising us something good to come out of 2020.
2020 is a top tip vintage. Yep.
What more can we ask for? But no, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Okay, so yeah, we're going to be answering all of the questions that you've put in. Thank you so much for getting involved in the chat. It's great to see some really cool questions coming in, and we'll look forward to getting our teeth into that in just a sec. The other thing is we're going to talk about pricing of the bottles in the end, but I hope you'll be quite pleasantly surprised because, you know, especially these two, they're quite reasonably priced wines and are certainly punch above their weight for quality. So, yeah, Jamie, how did you feel during your first winemaker interview? Apart from me, of course.
Well, absolutely. My first winemaker interview. Apart from
you were about to say real winemaker.
I might have been going to say that, but hey, well, we've got real wine now.
We've
so
got real
okay.
wine, so there you go.
It was huge. It was hugely interesting. But to be honest, you know, I'm really glad that Hamish did most of the talking. What we'll do though, he gave us a huge amount of his time. We sat and chatted for about 45 minutes. It's fantastic. So what we'll do is we're going to put the full interview up on our shiny new YouTube channel. So if you want to get into a deeper dive and listen to me and Hamish have a little chat about Merlot and St. Clair and his history in life,
and he's got a cool history, just so you know.
Absolutely.
When we glossed over it by saying that he didn't have much formal viticulture and enology training, that slightly underdoes it. It was an amazing story, and his talent actually is what put him where it was.
But anyway, it's a great 45 minutes. So once again, keep an eye out for our YouTube channel coming up, and then we can have a little look for that.
Yeah, so do go onto YouTube and have a quick search for the Online Wine Tasting Club and click that subscribe button. I feel like one of those YouTube vloggers now. I feel dirty. But there we go.
Subscribe.
Yeah, click subscribe and click and no, I'm not doing that. Anyway, so yeah, there we go.
But, you know, I think what we have with this, you know, New Zealand has so much more to offer than we can possibly show with just two wines. You know, if we'd be doing a full tasting session, we'd done the full discoveries, we would explore some more different grapes, we would have done a comparison of two wines, maybe the same grape grown from two different regions to look at the differences, and, you know, and see which one you preferred. But now, you know, I hope the lesson you can take away from this is there is so much more to discover. There's so many more interesting things about this incredibly beautiful and varied country. You know, that's really it.
It's just fantastic. I mean, it's such a stunning place. We really wanted to get over there and explore, but obviously the current situation, we can't. But now it's time to go back to wine number one and answer some of those cool questions and just hear what you think. There have been some proper opinions in the chat I've heard, so that's cool.
No, absolutely. So we always get a lot of questions about food and wine pairing.
Because it's difficult. It's a difficult thing, you know. You get it wrong, and it can turn a bad wine. Sorry, you get it wrong, and it can turn a good wine into something that you actually don't really enjoy that much. And yeah.
You say that, but I think what's important is it is much more difficult to make a bad wine pairing than it is to make a good wine pairing.
That's fair.
It's very important to drink what you're enjoying and what's great. And, you know, I have drunk Gewürztraminer with ribeye steak because I wanted to drink that wine and I wanted to eat that food.
It
was delicious. But when we talk about Gruner is a really good savoury wine. It's got high acidity, and it's one of the few wines in the world that I find pairs with it's always tough to pair with asparagus or salads and things like that. You know, that's always a difficult pairing. Gruner does that very, very well because you get this little bit of pepperiness about it and absolutely beautiful. So kind of like light dishes, asparagus, hollandaise sauce, poached egg, happy days, glass of Gruner. I think that is the way
I think that one in particular would, you know, because of I really got that savouriness. I mean, I was getting sort of like sage coming through. Really
absolutely. It's got that herbaceousness.
And what does sage work with? And pepper and sage, for me, I just say pork. I mean, it's like something kind of a pork
stuffing.
That'd be incredible. So yeah, do that.
But then when we talk to the Merlot, and it's a rich style of Merlot. It's not the Pomerol that we talked about earlier. It's not got that massive spiciness. It's not got a lot of tannin structure. This is a very quaffable, drinkable Merlot. This is dark chocolate tart. This is, you know, rich, riper food, you know, with red, you know, something, I don't know, with a cranberry sauce or something like that would be absolutely fantastic. And, you know, someone said, how suitable is Merlot for aging? Merlot is a great grape for aging depending where it comes from. So when we go into the old world, when we're talking about Europe and really, really good for aging. It does very, very well with Cabernet. When we dive into the new world, it will age, and you can hold it for 5 years, 10 years, sometimes even 15 years. I don't think huge amounts of them will improve drastically with age, but they're still going to be really good drinking. So
That's fair.
drink them now. Drink them now.
Yeah, it's a really drinkable wine. That there's there's a good question there as well. It's how suitable for Merlot is aging. I mean, this one I think is designed to be drunk relatively young, wouldn't you say? But you could
right about now.
Right
about now. Exactly now.
Yep, exactly now. I've drunk mine, so I can't really comment. But yeah, I mean, look, the 2013 Pomerol, that's like the beginning of life for that sort of thing. So yeah, you could be drinking Petrus's 100% Merlot way back years.
Exactly. And I think the important thing is with all things in wine, it's very difficult. You can't make a blanket statement about a particular grape or a particular region or a particular year.
There's a lot of it's the winemaking. So yeah, there's another question. Of all the white wines that they make in New Zealand, and obviously they make tons of varieties because some were planted years and years ago and some were planted recently as an experiment. But why go with Gruner?
Gruner?
So you picked it, you can tell us.
I picked it because A, I think it's interesting. B, the heritage is cool because the Seyfried family actually emigrated from Austria and brought it in. And believe it or not, Gruner used to be the biggest planted varietal in New Zealand until they came round and they started chip budding it.
You went there. Oh,
I
God.
did. So what they did was when they wanted to plant Sauvignon, rather than rip everything up, they cut a little hole in the little V shape in the Gruner roots and just put some Sauvignon Blanc in there. Done.
One
and
bud
we
at
had
a time.
Sauvignon.
Yeah.
So we could have chosen 1,000 different things, but we just like the wine, and I think it's something that a lot of these wines we want to have stuff there that you might just not pick off the shelf if you saw it. So we get people to have the chance to taste. If you love it, that's amazing.
And it's a really different expression of it.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that
But
makes it
also,
quite cool.
if you don't love it, you now know that you don't love it. So we've all learned a little bit one way or the other.
Let's go back to sulfites.
No,
Do all wines have sulfites? I'm the winemaker, so
That's all you.
I should
The
probably talk
sulfite
about this. Yes, all wines have sulfites. Not all wines have added sulfites. Sulfites are a naturally occurring thing that happens as part of the fermentation process. It's little bits taken out of the components of the grapes and of the soil and all those things. It just happens. But it so occurs that sulfites are one of the best kind of preservatives to just keep your wine in tip-top condition. And we sell natural wines which have really low levels of sulfites. And I've tried making a zero added sulfite wine last year, and it didn't go very well. So all wines have sulfites to some level, and the only problem really that has been scientifically proven, who knows about other ones, but it is for asthma sufferers. All wines have sulfites.
That's enough sulfites.
That's enough. Enough chemistry.
We've got a quick shout out to Christina and Jake, who are in West Hampstead, who are apparently doing Merlot with truffled brie.
Oh, that sounds
so
good.
What you need to do is you need to take your online wine tasting box, fold it up, put some truffled brie in it, send it back to where it came from, and we will have the truffled brie with Merlot tomorrow. Thank you very much for that. That's very, very kind of you.
Kiwis are apparently grafty so-and-sos. That's a very, very good joke. I like that. Well done, Tris. Other New World countries in Gruner Veltliner. Any other...
we can. This is my last point because I want to start giving stuff away.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But anyway, New World Gruner. There's not huge amounts of it. The only one that I've had a lot of experience with, there's a really good winemaker over in Santa Barbara, which you might find out that me and Alex
we quite like it.
A little bit obsessed about. But Tatama Ranch make a really, really good Gruner Veltliner. It's delicious, but once again, it's a little bit on the expensive side. I think you probably pay 28 to 30 quid for a bottle of it. Absolutely delicious, and if we pull some in, it might get on a tasting at some point.
Yeah, let's
But once again, you've got to get it in.
I'm
But anyway.
We'll talk about vegan-friendly wines later.
Let's
go back.
Back
it's
to
time,
freebies.
I think, for those of you... Oh, sorry, what's going on?
It's competition time. I'm giving stuff away. Relax.
Yeah,
relax.
Time to move on.
Relax.
Competition time. Cool.
So competition time. Because it is our first one, what we are going to do is we are going to give away a mixed case, which has one bottle of each of the wines we're going to taste tonight, and then something special from my private collection.
Private collection.
So what comes out of my private collection depends how nice you are to us in the comments in the chat. So we'll see how it is. So we have been full of random questions in the past and always worried about people Googling things. So the question is...
He's asked about the average weight of wombats.
Exactly. But listen very, very carefully, for I shall say this once, and once only. The question is based on New Zealand wine production from the 2019 vintage. So if you listened earlier, we would have told you roughly how many bottles of Sauvignon Blanc are made, and that's roughly 70% of New Zealand's wine.
Yeah.
So, if everybody who lived in New Zealand deserted the island and the sheep ruled, and the sheep decided to share all the wine from the 2019 vintage equally between them, how many bottles of wine would each sheep get?
That's going to be a lot of drunk sheep. Or not, I don't know. I have absolutely no idea.
I've never
many
given a
sheep
sheep
are there?
and how much wine a sheep can drink. But anyway,
we should
try and Google it.
It's the first
Google
one.
it.
Yeah, try googling that. Yeah,
Google that.
It's our first one, so we think let's throw in a few more prizes.
More prizes.
Yeah, more prizes are always good. So yeah.
Okay, all right. So we've got a case of wine. So that's nice.
Yep.
What we would love to do then.
By the way, get your guesses in the chat.
Guesses in the chat, and we will pick it at the end. We'll pick it at the end. Get your numbers in. Get your numbers in. Oh my God, it's funny in the chat. I can see it over there. But anyway, okay, we're going to have to take a pause. The producer stopped. It's over. Thank you very much. That's the end of Online Wine Tasting Club. Have a great night. But no, anyway, so what we're going to do is thank you very much for everyone who's joined us. But what we'd love to do is not only whoever wins the case will get this prize as well, but the other 4 closest answers, we will give you an opportunity to invite a friend who's not been with us before to have a little complimentary tryout of the Online Wine Tasting Club. So you get to gift this joyful thing to a friend or an enemy if you don't think it's great. So you've got lots of options there. So hopefully it's to a friend and they'll have a little chance to try us out. So you've got a little bit of time to get those numbers in there. There's a lot of wine and there's a lot of sheep. I'd probably get your number in now before you drink another 3 wines because then math just goes out the window.
Absolutely.
But anyway.
I mean, there's a comment in the thing saying, "You guys."
Oh, guys.
He would have thought of that one.
I'm sad that I didn't say it. But anyway, that's enough of that, Jess. So now, so just so you know, we've done a white, we've done a red, and now we're going back to whites. Because we're doing
That's
this...
not normal. That's not our
it's
normal
tasting.
tasting.
It's not normal, but because we're doing our split level, that was our Discoverers level for New Zealand, and now we're going on to our Adventurers level. So there we are. So
yeah, time to change gears.
Have a sip of water, rinse your glasses, and here we go again. So now we had somewhere a little bit closer to home. England, in fact.
England.
And as I said, this is the level where we change gears to Adventurers level, have a little splash of water to cleanse the palate before we jump back into white wines.
Exactly.
So this level of the club is, you can drink wine whenever you want, but it's a little bit more behind the scenes knowledge of how the grape gets to the glass. We'll taste more unique styles of certain grapes. The tastings will be driven by a topic rather than a country. Cool climate wines, island wines, soil types, organic, biodynamic viticulture, oak versus still, whatever we decide we want to geek out about. Promise it won't be too geeky, but you know, just a little bit more in depth. There may well be some competitive elements where Alex will pick some of his choices against mine, and frankly, we just think that makes it a little bit more fun because you get those differences of opinions, and also obviously I'm going to win.
What, like you did in the Spain versus Italy tasting?
Okay.
Or actually the England versus France sparkling wine competition. Or you know, should we go into more?
Yeah.
Look, he's off.
Okay, no. We're not going to get into that because that was just warm-up runs and that's nothing to do with anything. So, yeah, whatever you like.
Let's save that for later, but let's get on to England. So I'm going to open my drawer of wines and say now is the time to open wine number 3 when you're ready. Well, if you finished that. Oh, well, do the honours, sir. Yes, absolutely. I mean, a lot of you might have heard that we are a pretty serious country now. Probably one of the best in the world for making champagne method sparkling wines. Honestly, we win international competitions, countless awards every single year at the highest level. And people are even started here on Grapevine. Sorry.
Oh,
I'm going to go there.
That's me.
But we actually were the country who invented champagne.
Hang on. You can hardly say we invented champagne. So watch this. Alex is inevitably about to bang on about some English bloke who wrote down how to make sparkling wines 30 years before Dom Perignon did it.
That's the one. Yeah, well, I was, but I mean, we did.
Well, you know, there's a bit of a different, little difference between Dom Perignon and some guy down the pub who decided to put a bit of sugar in his wine and made it fizzy by mistake, don't you think?
Look, that's how you make champagne. That is literally the champagne method. Put a bit of sugar in and see what happens. You know?
Okay. Let's not get carried away with this because tonight is nothing to do with sparkling wine, is it? So Oz Clarke recently said, and we like Oz Clarke.
We do like Oz.
Nice
He's
guy.
awesome.
He talks a lot.
He's got good shirts.
But forget champagne. England should gun for Burgundy and Provence, which means making world-class still wines.
Yeah, white and rosé, absolutely.
But, you know, for as long as I've been tasting wine, up until a few years ago, England wines were still, A, frankly, not brilliant.
Yeah.
But B, I felt they were a little overpriced for the quality. They wasn't always what I felt was great value there. So as far as I've been concerned, we've probably still got a bit of a hill to climb.
It seems painfully obvious and frightfully English, but the best place to start about this is probably the weather. I mean, obviously, compared to Italy, it's cold here, so it's not much of a controversial thing to say that. Grape growers compare heat on a scale called GDD, or growing degree days. It doesn't matter what it stands for, but the bigger the number, the hotter it is. And Sicily is more than 2,200.
That's big.
That's quite big. Chablis is in the coolest, the lowest category, which is anything less than 1,400. But England, in the 1950s, we had an average of 650. And that's they could barely ripen anything at all. So this led to quite a big fight, let's call it that, about how we should make wine here. Should we pick the grapes which are specifically developed and bred to grow fast and survive in tough conditions? Or should we just try to plant the Chardonnays, the Pinot Noirs, and see what happened? And before the global warming started, it seemed obvious, and everyone throughout England was planting your Dornfelders and all sorts of things like that. But we wanted to try both different approaches out and see now that climate has evolved, what was our favourite.
So, for our third wine, we're on number 3, isn't that nice?
Number 3.
We're going to look at a grape named after the Roman god of wine, which is Bacchus. And this wine, my pouring skills are very poor, but
you didn't finish it. You're supposed to do that on your sommelier's exam.
I know, but it's this wine is grown in a tiny vineyard a few miles away from Toddington Services on the M1 by a man called Jeff.
Perhaps it's not a promising start, but let's talk briefly about Bacchus. Like I said, it was created by crossbreeding other grapes in a lab in Germany. And when they tried it, it ripened early. It was hugely resistant to diseases that affected vines, and it developed some fairly pleasant flavours. But to be honest, in Germany, it was a little bit too warm. Imagine saying that Germany is too warm. It's up there in the summer, it gets really hot. So it was too early for that. Now, England's had vineyards for thousands of years, and the Romans carried grapes all around Europe as they conquered it. And, we've had those vineyards, but it's never been easy. So come the 50s, a few proper pioneers started looking at growing here again. And this is the lovely thing where we go back to New Zealand. And just like them, we compared notes and we went to those kind of Austrian, German, Swiss grapes, and they struggled. So people went back to their textbooks and looked to academia for things that would work a bit better here. They thought about Müller-Thurgau again, Cheval Blanc, and eventually some of the more recently created things like Bacchus were planted here, and they worked really well in this environment. They had that slightly longer growing season that allowed them to build their sugars up, not catch any diseases, and actually develop their flavours a bit longer.
Yeah, but I feel, the problem was we had few professional winemakers. There wasn't a huge amount of people who really knew what to do with these grapes. The wines were, well, not great. But, people take time to work things out, and Bacchus has now been studied carefully, special yeast selected to bring out the best of it. And we think some of the latest ones are fantastic Bacchus. Fantastic.
And we tried one at Hush Heath as well.
We're not there yet.
Not there yet. That was pretty bloody good.
Exactly. But Bacchus is commonly known as English Sauvignon Blanc. It's fragrant. It's floral. It doesn't need a huge amount of the way of spraying, so it's low intervention winemaking. And what shocked us most about this is one day, everybody thought Bacchus, like Sauvignon, had to be drunk young, bright, fresh, easygoing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that we winemakers in this country tend to release Bacchus almost the second that they can. They very rarely keep it longer than a year or two. This one is 5 years old, and that's ancient. I mean, that's like me. It was picked by our friend Jeff and sent off to Litmus Wines, which is really genuinely one of the coolest winemaking operations in the country, to turn this lovely drop of juice you've got in front of you into this quite cool wine. There's not much of it left. We've bought pretty much everything he had left because, do you know what? There's not many 5-year-old Bacchuses around.
No, we taste Bacchus from all around England, and obviously it's one of our favourites because it's unique. It's made down in Sussex by Litmus, as we said, but the vines are hand-tended by Jeff in Bedfordshire. And the small scale makes it possible for him to give the grapes all the attention that they deserve. And, that's not possible in massive vineyards. No, it's not. So, for this wine, we tip our hats to Mr. Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the great thing about Bacchus is it's always going to ripen here, and it will always taste pretty good. So if you are okay with pretty good, it's great. But you aren't dependent on a great year like 2018 that happens once in Blue Moon. But this one is just that peculiar and wonderful blend of independent mindedness, English eccentricity, and we love it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So, let's keep drinking this. There's a good question popped up, and I'm hoping Alex has a better answer because my vintage history of English Bacchus is not particularly great. And the question is 2015, does it taste good because it was a hot summer? I'm not 100% sure. I think a big part of this wine being great is its development. It was by tasting it, I would guess it was a warmer summer because you've got to have that richness, that ripeness, and that fruit for the wine to turn into, to have those tertiary flavours and those developmental characteristics. I think probably it was a warmer year. But it's just interesting to see something that's developed. This is probably the oldest Bacchus I've ever tasted.
Yeah, well, you haven't got much to go on.
I don't really, and it's a great question, and I wish I had a better thing.
Question, but no one's writing down Bacchus vintages really. I mean, there are people keeping track. Jeff probably is. Jeff might be doing that. He's an awesome guy. We love him to bits. We might take the mickey a little bit, but So the easiest thing to say is that I don't know, and I would love to come back to you. I'd rather give you an answer when I've actually looked up the data than to tell you the wrong thing. But I will tell you this little point of comparison, which is that probably my favourite producer of Bacchus in the UK, my least favourite Bacchus that they have produced was 2018, and that was the hottest year that we'd had. So I suspect it probably wasn't a particularly warm year. I suspect it was there or thereabouts, or even a little bit cooler. So it's the opposite, perhaps, of what you expect because it's bred to grow early. So, yeah.
So everything I said, nix that.
Yeah, forget it.
He's the winemaker. But yeah, so please continue drinking, continue enjoying.
And we've got some fantastic tasting notes. We've got figs and goat cheese.
We've got some great comments. It's
Is Jeff the Badger Man? Yes, Jeff. We should tell you. So Jeff has some experimental plantings, and we're going to hopefully make them into some wine this year at our own winery.
If the badgers don't eat them.
Badgers don't eat them.
So we've got to get up there before the because the badgers like it.
There will be a future reference to badgers later in this.
Exactly. But no, I'm just sorry. I'm looking off to the side because Caroline's
that's where
showing the chat to me. But yes, I get it's like a Loire Valley wine. It's got that fruit. It's got that kind of minerality about it. I think it's really cool. Bacchus, every now and again, it's in the back end of a blend, but you know, it's really does well by itself. It doesn't need too much added to it.
One of my favourites was a Bacchus Sauvignon blend. That was cool. And there's obviously the Skies wine from Skies blend, which is another one from Hush Heath that we tasted. We'll hopefully have that one on the same as well.
I think people's glasses are probably getting
people's
dry.
Glasses
so
are getting dry.
We should move
Let's
on.
Move on. Yeah.
We should move on while you keep drinking because a dry glass is a sad glass. So in the Adventure series, we want to explain some tricky or more interesting ideas about how the grape gets into the bottle without boring you senseless.
Yeah.
So Caroline, our producer, has set Alex a time limit of 5 minutes to explain grape growing with you. Seriously, I'm only going to give him 3. A topic that people will dedicate their entire lives to in 5 minutes. He doesn't have a chance.
So you've got a timer.
Start the timer.
Oh no! Go quick!
Okay, so vines exist in the wild. If you leave them alone, they'll make grapes perfectly well. So why do we need to do anything? Well, in a word, it's consistency. You need all the grapes to ripen at the same speed while avoiding the things that harm them. If they ripen together, they'll all have the right flavour, not too sour and not too sweet. It's like cooking. You don't make a delicious meal by blending raw and burnt food together. Obviously, ripe grapes are packed full of sugar, so things try to eat them, and disease loves them too. Now, vines are jungle plants, which means they try to grow up to the top of the trees to get as much light as possible, so they'll focus all their effort into growing the highest bit up even higher. And that highest bit, therefore, has more leaves and the berries ripen faster. And so if you don't control that tendency by trying to keep everything at pretty much the same height, you end up with just a few bunches of grapes that are any use to you at all as a winemaker, and the rest are underripe. Therefore, what we've got to do is 1, protect the grapes, 2, ripen them evenly and at the right speed, and 3, grow as many as we can that the site can cope with. Now, leaves are basically solar panels for grapes, but instead of electricity, they turn sunlight into sugar. The more area those leaves have, the more light they catch, the more sugar they make. And so you can control how much foliage you need depending on how warm and bright it is in your vineyard. Right, let's talk about the rows. The sun rises in the east and moves west, so if they're lined up perfectly south, you'll get the same amount on both sides of the vine, helping the grapes ripen evenly as well. If you're on a really steep slope, you'll want to go along the slope because otherwise it's really hard to walk up and down. And if you are on a less steep slope, then you still want the vines to go up and down the slope so that the tractor doesn't roll over at the end and hurt you. Let's move on to pruning. Right, each year you cut away all of last year's growth to control how many new shoots there will be by controlling how many buds there are. That in turn controls how many grapes you have, which is what matters to you. There are 2 common ways to do this: cane or spur pruning, or guillot or cordon as they're known in France. With guillot, you have just 2 sticks which are made last year. Those 2 sticks came from last year's growths. From each of those little buds that are on there, come spring, you'll get a nice new shoot coming out of it. And on top of those shoots will hopefully grow the grapes. Now, come along to harvest, you take the grapes off, and then come winter, you want to prune it again. And so you make 2 cuts there and there, and that means that you take everything else off and burn it, leaving 2 sticks, which you fold down, and you start again the next year, all ready to go. Now, cordon's a bit different. What you've left with on these 2 older arms on each side are just inch-long little bits called spurs, which maybe have 1 or 2 buds on them. Those last years, off those come the shoots again. On the shoots come the grapes, take them off at harvest, and then you can cut them off really easily just in a straight line like that, perhaps even with a machine. So that's quite cool. The guillot is most common in England because it's better for dealing with disease resistance, keeps everything young and fresh, and cordon's a lot easier and cheaper to manage and perhaps comes up with more grapes. So for a practical example, I thought I'd take you to my back garden where I've got 1 of each different sort. Now, on the left, here we have a guillot prunes thing. That's just 1 stick left from all of this bushy growth last year. And on the right, you've got your cordon, which has got just a few little spurs sticking up off it. Right, on to training. Now, training is all about trying to manage where all of this growth goes, and there's so many different ways of doing this. I can't possibly go into all of them, but it's a very practical subject, and it depends what you're fighting. If you've got things like badgers trying to eat grapes, you want things lifted off the ground. If you've got lots of wind, you want it a bit lower. You want to shade the grapes from hot sun, keeps lots of foliage close to the grapes, and you might need a bit of space for the air to get through. There's lots of different things, as you can see here. Some hang down in curtains, some grow up, some are supported on pergolas like you get in the northwest of Spain or parts of Italy. And then you get your windy islands where things are made into things like baskets there, so things like Santorini or Lanzarote. So yeah, basically it's all about what you're trying to do and what's available to you as a vineyard manager. If you've got lots of labour, then you'll set things up to do it all by hand maybe, and if you haven't, then you might get things set so that a machine can do it for you. And if it's hot at harvest time, you'll probably want to get it done harvesting as quickly as possible at night time. So yeah, that is viticulture. We haven't mentioned nutrition, water, disease. Well, plants need fertilizer and a live, thriving soil. They need water, and they also need to be protected against diseases like botrytis and mildew by spraying. But sorry to gloss over it, but I think that's out of time.
That's close.
Oh,
very close.
That was very close.
Just in time.
indeed.
So you're allowed to do that again. Maybe.
Okay, thank you. Very magnanimous of you.
I know, I'm very kind like that.
So the lovely thing is, now that he's given me permission, I can actually hopefully talk to you about a few more things, particularly on the winemaking side, because
I do have a 3-minute timer as well.
Yeah, the 3-minute
put it in the chat.
Indeed. Yeah, it's a cool time of year for us as winemakers because we actually get to make some wine. It's one of those strange things. Everyone thinks it's a bit like beer, where you're just always can get the ingredients. But no, the grapes come in at harvest time and then you make the wine, and the rest of the time it's pretty much waiting and trying not to mess it up. But so the next few months are going to be pretty crazy, and so you'll get to come along if you subscribe to the Adventurer series on this journey with us. So
hang out in the winery
come
with
hang
Alex.
out in the winery.
Doing low intervention, #nothing. Yes, letting the grapes do the work.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the Bacchus, I'm so glad to see that. There's some amazing comments in there.
And I think it's great. It's really cool to A, have a Bacchus, and B, an age
5.
That's 5. So it's
that's older than my daughter.
It's rare to see that. So no, I'm glad lots of people liked it, and it's nice to chuck something a little bit different into the tasting.
It is.
But that is it. Enough Bacchus. But thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
So while a lot of people were out planting strange-sounding things like Huxelrebe or Saval Blanc, there was something going on, and the climate was starting to warm up. Now, some say that it might be something to do with pumping hundreds of millions of tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
Rumours.
Well, it's just rumours, isn't it? Yeah,
rumours.
probably fake news. That's what's been going on. And if you ever want to see any evidence that the climate is changing, whatever the reason might be, we talked earlier about this GDD scale. Again, doesn't matter what it means, but we were about 650. Suddenly, a lot of our years were ending up around about 1,000. And that's exactly, if I'm remembering right, that's exactly where Chablis is. So suddenly we've gone from being a wet, cold place to, we have the same climate as one of the best places in the world for making white wines.
Yeah,
that's not a bad place to be, is it?
Not a horrible place to be. But Chablis, I think it's got its own brand. People want to have a Chablis, and we go, it's delicious stuff. But just so everyone is aware, Chablis is Chardonnay. So Chablis is the place, and Chardonnay is the grape. And there was this huge thing. The reputation of Chardonnay got a little bit shot, kind of late 80s, early 90s going on through.
Should we chuck some more oak chips in it, mate?
More oak. It was oak with a hint of Chardonnay.
Yeah.
And what I think is really important when we talk about wine is blanket statements aren't great. Saying, I don't like Chardonnay, I don't like Riesling, I don't like red wines. There's so many things within each category. So I would say, and I would challenge most people to be, it's not that you don't like Chardonnay, it's you don't like what some people do to Chardonnay. And there are those massive, big, rich, oaky styles, which I'm a big fan of. I quite enjoy them. But some people think it's over. And then you've got these very crisp, clean styles, very high acid, very zippy zingy,
and not much oak,
and zero oak sometimes, absolutely none. And some people love them, some people don't like them. So what the thing is don't be anti-Chardonnay. Know who your winemaker is, what the winemaking technique is, and go from there. So, you know, generally your Chablys will be that little bit crisper, cleaner, fresher kind of style. But what we're really talking about here, because we're not doing France, are we? We're not doing France. Mr. Taylor has this funny feeling that Chablis, that's been doing it forever, making the best wines in the world. You know, Burgundy in general, the best white Chardonnay wines in the world, that England could be doing something.
Well, it's not just
like
me. It's not just me. It's Oz Clark, and he knows the odd bit or two about wine. He's even got the right shirts for it.
Well, to be fair, he did say, you know, sparkling's where it is, but we should start going after the Burgundy styles and the Languedoc style, because we're starting to get the climate there.
And he's right. And so, especially for me, as someone who grew up at a young age in Kent, I spent an awful lot of time out looking at these incredible chalky landscapes. So the North and South Downs are just beautiful places. And whenever a winemaker sees a bit of chalk, their eyes light up, because the soil has got this reputation for just being hard for the roots of the vine to crack and go down, and people start flouncing around with words like minerality and things like that. We'll save that one for a different day. But so I grew up, and I even had the chance when I was sort of my early mid-teens to go to some of the Kentish vineyards, and I might have just been offered a little sip of something in a carefully controlled fashion, probably with a meal. But
always, of course. So what you're saying then is Kent matched Burgundy even in the 90s?
No, it was, I'm afraid to say, not exactly. No, it was bloody awful. So the ones that I tried, I'm sure.
Okay, so not Kent on the head. Where are we going? So we're going to go to Cornwall. That's warm, or we could go to down East Sussex. That's not up to Norfolk. Where are we going?
Yep, you guessed it, Kent. Let's why don't you crack open wine number 4, and we're going to go on a bit of a road trip.
Hey, do 5 at the same time. Have 2 glasses. Try the 2 Chardonnays side by side. That could be fun.
That could be fun. Let's go.
Okay. Go on then. Why Kent?
Well, I grew up around there, and honestly, I can't describe how good the wines are. And you've said that English wines can be overpriced, and yeah, land and people, it's just more expensive here, you're right. But that point gets neatly dodged if you put yourself up against really top wines. It becomes more about rarity and quality.
So, I absolutely agree with that, and the sparkling wines can be world class. But there's still wines, there's so many strange things out there that people have never heard of, like Dornfelder or Huxley, and they're expensive. How can you expect people to spend £20 on something they've never heard of?
Yeah, I hear that, but I mean, if our wines today were every bit as good as Meursault, Chablis, Puligny, Montrachet, would asking £20 a bottle still be expensive then?
Alright then, so, where are we going?
Well, the first place we're heading to is Simpsons. They're based in the Elham Valley down south of Canterbury, and they honestly just make some exceptional wine.
Really? There's the option that we could just keep driving and go straight to Chablis.
No, it's nice to start seeing more and more, English wineries doing stuff that isn't just sparkling. And there's great sparkling out there, but most of it is a little bit expensive for everyday drinking. And it's good to see other things, competing on the, good enough to compete on the world stage.
Yep, I agree. We're a long way from. I think my first experience of English wine was at our college ball back in 2000, when someone had decided that it was a brilliant idea to, rather than serve any foreign stuff, they'd bring in from the local vineyard, and it confirmed any prejudices that any of us had about the state of the English wine industry at the time. Of course, I think that was at the time when Knight Timber and people like that were off doing it. Hushy said he planted 2 years after that, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting for me because obviously I'm very, very new into the English wine world after spending a decade in the States.
Yeah.
So when I left in 2004 for the second time, there wasn't really a huge chat about it. There were a few people doing
some bits locally, some plantings and stuff like that. But there wasn't this shout about it.
Well, we've arrived here this morning into Boreham in Kent, in the Elham Valley, in the chalk of the Kentish Downs, and we have come to the Simpsons Wine Estate, where we're going to have a little bit of a look around and see what Charles and Ruth Simpson have been doing here. So, thank you very much for welcoming us.
Thanks for coming down to Simpsons Wine Estate. So I was just going to give you a bit of an introduction and a bit of a history, and then we'll go for a wander to one of our vineyards, the Roman Road Vineyard. So Charles and Ruth Simpson Charles used to be in pharmaceuticals, Ruth used to be in humanitarian non-government organisations. And like a lot of us, they got the wine bug and decided they wanted to get involved in a wine project, make wine. They weren't probably excited or as excited or enamoured with the English still wines. They thought that there would be a struggle. But so though planting for sparkling wine, they stuck to the 3 classic varieties. They always wanted to plant Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier. And within that, they also decided to plant not only sparkling wine clones, suitable for sparkling wine, but to add depth and complexity to the sparkling wines, they planted Burgundy clones of all 3 varieties, a mixture of Burgundy clones. So there a lot of thought went into the planting vineyard. They found that the sites, using with the Burgundy clones and the sites, has made it possible to get enough ripeness and depth to produce still wines. But we'll go into a bit of a history of that back at the vineyard and talk about the different vintages and how we arrived at that point.
Cool, sounds
fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction. Shall we go and have a look at some vines?
Yes.
Simpsons have 2 vineyards, one planted on gentle slopes of an area known as Gravel Castle, right next to the Roman road between Dover and Canterbury, which seems likely to be a home to a Roman fort at some point. The other is the southeast facing slopes of the valley known as Derringstone.
After looking around the vineyards and seeing they're nearly ready to harvest grapes, we headed back to the winery to have a tasting. The first wine that we tried is the Chalklands Classic Cuvée Traditional Method Sparkling Wine. This is made in the same way that champagnes are, and unlike a lot of English sparkling wines, this is probably one of the most French styled that we've ever tried. It was absolutely delicious. We can't send you a sample, but we will have some available to buy in the shop.
I'm going to taste the Gravel Castle Chardonnay from 2019. It's named after a local road here, Gravel Castle, and it's all about displaying the beautiful, fresh, precise fruit we get from these sites, 2 vineyard sites. It's a blend of 2 Burgundy clones. It's very much in the Chablis style. It's been described by a couple of wine writers, Chablis in style, or like Chablis used to be made. So it's quite interesting that they react like that.
Rather than letting Henry, Jamie or myself tell you what you're supposed to be tasting, we thought we'd just go back to the studio and find out. So yeah, wine number 4. Apparently you guys really liked it, so I'd say that's a pretty good sign. What do you think? My recommendation?
I think it's quite tasty. I think it's a really good drop of juice and Chardonnay, would you believe it?
I know. So, and just so that you know, they do an even better one than this. It's about the same price as the Hush Heath. I mean, I say better, but it's just a different style, a different one. And that's richer and oakier as well. But both stunning wines. And I think if I had to pick, this one's my favourite because it's crisper and it's cleaner and it's like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've now appeased your childhood dreams of wineries in Kent. Yep. I can see this because there's hops everywhere, and we heard earlier, hops where hops grow, vinifera will grow. And I say vinifera, I mean wine grapes. Wine grapes. Yes. Yeah. So now we're done with Kent. We should probably go somewhere else. We've got a day out. So where are we going next? We're going to go Sussex. Yeah. No.
Kent.
We're staying in Kent.
We're staying in Kent.
Okay.
We're off to Hush Heath.
Let's see what else we do in Kent.
Hush Heath is an estate located between Tunbridge Wells and Maidstone. It's owned by Richard and Leslie Balfour Lynn, who planted 25 hectares of vineyards and established a state-of-the-art winery and tasting room that had only opened a few years ago. It's beautiful. We met the head winemaker Fergus, who took over as head winemaker from his father Owen, who was one of the legends of English winemaking.
Here we're about to try the Chardonnay. This is the 2019?
2018.
This is 2018 vintage,
2018,
okay.
yeah.
And it's from the Springfield. Is that one of your vineyards then?
Yeah, so it's one of our more recent vineyards that was planted 2015, 2016, somewhere in that region.
Yeah.
Really interesting site. It's really interesting site actually, and it's produced some really interesting Chardonnay, especially when you consider how young it is already. Yeah. So this is our 2018 incarnation. So this was something we've never done before. So this is an oak Chardonnay. So Hush Heath doesn't have a tradition of oak in its wines. We've always been about purity of fruits. We've usually been about no MLF, no oak, very clean, very precise wines, and so the incorporation of oak was a new one.
Controversial?
It wasn't in the end, actually, and what we actually realised was that we quite like a bit of oak, but it was certainly something that we weren't originally going to do. It was oak, but we had this amazing Chardonnay, and we wanted to oak it. So it's around about we were still quite sparing, so it's probably only 20%. That had it. None of it was barrel ferment. It was oak aged rather than barrel ferment. Fermented in stainless steel. And I find ferment is where you tend to pick up more of the oak flavours. The aging is more about the softening.
Yeah.
That's just been I'm sure the science.
I can see that. You can sort of spot those barrel fermented Chardonnays quite a way away, can't you? Even in very neutral ones. So.
Yeah. So again, combination of French and American. We love cocking around with different oaks and different continents and everything is played with. But what I like about it is that we didn't go too heavy.
No.
It's quite a subtle oak. When you try the 2019, it's an entirely different story. But for this, what we really wanted was to show the delicacy of the fruit, because 2018 had some amazing fruit, but we also wanted that sort of twist of oak that just gives it that bit of structure and that grit.
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool wine.
It definitely feels more, and I don't like throwing out styles here, it's definitely more Burgundian in style in its oakiness than it is either Australian or Californian, which is great. And I think there's a lot of people just, they go into, I don't like oaky wines, but they say they like Burgundy. It's like, well, it's not you don't like oak, it's like how oak is used, and you can abuse a wine with oak, you absolutely can. But this is just, it's nice, it's subtle, it brings it all around. It's great.
We're starting to get an English wine convert on Chardonnay today.
It's such an exciting variety to work with in wine, and English wine in particular. I think, yes, Bacchus is going to be the flag bearer, but I think English Chardonnay has real potential to be huge.
It does, and it shocks me actually with the depth of fruits development that's happened, because I sort of assumed it would be permanently stuck very much in the Chablis kind of area.
Absolutely.
And we've had a few that we've just had, okay, honestly, if I blinded this, I would never ever have guessed this was English, and that's absolutely up there as well, isn't it? So,
it's wonderful. Truly,
it's been a good day, hasn't it?
This is going all too well.
Yeah.
So, it seems Alex might have been right after all. English still wines are lovely, and no longer with the caveat of, that's not bad for an English wine. Amazing wines that can be put against any of their counterparts worldwide.
So that was the Hush Heath. I've got to say, I was really, really impressed, and you could tell by the way that Fergus talked about it. He cared about that.
It's lovely. It's rich. It's decadent. It got great flavour, great length of finish. But you look at the two side by side. They're two very, very different wines.
Yeah.
Is one better than the other? Yes, the one that I picked, obviously. But outside of that, they both have their place. I feel if I'm sitting down having a meal, the Hush Heath has that richness, that decadence, that you want to have a bit of food. Simpsons, I don't like to use the term simplistic because it's really not a simple wine, but a little bit more easy drinking, you know.
See, I think it had quite a lot of complexity in it still, and I've seen a few of the other comments people were talking about that. But for me, it was a different kind. It was because it had a little bit more freshness. I would go for that with food, but with something like some Kentish oysters, something you always go local food, local wine.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
So,
but you know, there's some cool stuff coming out through the chat again. You know, Caroline says she doesn't typically go for Chardonnay, but you know, both of these are really nice. So that's good to hear that people are in. Another one. Who else have we got in here? We've got Helen who's saying Chardonnay, no, it's amazing, no creaminess, love this, so that's great to hear.
That's pretty good quotes. And Simone actually went to the Simpsons winery this weekend while staying at the Pig Hotel. They've got a bit of a partnership with the Pig Hotel down in down near Canterbury. And she says it's delicious. And they went to the winery and bought some bottles, even their red, which actually we did try. We'll come back to that.
You could always take it back and then buy it from us instead, yeah?
That's also true.
It's always an option, but you should drink it and then just buy more.
They're fantastic. And they also, the thing about going to the winery, I can't recommend that when things have calmed down and got back to normal, do go down and visit, because they have perhaps the best thing I've ever seen in a winery.
Pneumatic press, some weird geeky thing that you like?
Yeah, that was it. They had a press under nitrogen.
Or was it the slide?
No, it was the slide.
It was the slide. There was a slide from the tasting room down into the winery, and that's what we need out of life.
That's the sign of people who know how to play as well as make serious wine.
Exactly. But I think this is a great comment here from Anne-Marie. It says, really like number 4, which is the Simpsons wine, and I have avoided Chardonnay for a while, but this is rather lovely.
Yeah, it's the antidote to those.
So what we love about what we do with this is you get this little bit of wine and you can say, well, I'm not going to avoid it because it's come through my letterbox. I can't really avoid it. It's here. Yeah. And you can try it and go, I love it. You've not bought an entire bottle of something to go, that's not my thing.
I still don't like this.
So that's kind of cool. So that's great to see that we've got some people who may have either been anti-Chardonnay or steered away from Chardonnay have come back to play a little bit. Right. So that's kind of
And
cool.
the lovely thing is that we will have a wine shop, and we want to be one of the best places with the best prices on that you can get these things. What we're going to have is just the wines from our tastings.
No, he's lying to you. It's going to be all the wines from our tastings, plus some little fun bonus wines that we try. So what I'm going to add in here, so you know, there's some little things that we can't get over to you in this pack. So we can't get fizz over to you, but we're going to taste them. And if we love them, we'll put them in the shop. If we don't love them, they won't be there.
No.
So
like both of the Hush Heath and the Simpsons have some fantastic. And your friends over in New Zealand had a Riesling, which I know you're a big Riesling addict.
A little bit.
Pretty much, yeah.
A little bit. But no, so there'll be some other bits and pieces from, you know, the wineries. I think, if I've not drunk it all, we might have a little bit of a dessert wine from Hush Heath.
Oh God, that was incredible. That was like having lemon meringue pie in a bottle. There's not many dessert wines.
Let's not talk about other wines because people.
Let's stop. Yeah.
We don't want to make people sad that they've not got it. But anyway, just for those who have an interest, because we've obviously done these 2 levels and we're talking about these wonderful wines and the wonderful stuff. So just to give you an idea of where we are price-wise.
Yeah, we'll type in the numbers.
Exactly. Well, you know, once you get on the wine shop, you can go, it's all there. It's magic. It's like the internet does it for you or something. So when we talk about New Zealand, the Gruner is about 13 quid, and
it's 2020, and he's amused by the fact that the internet does things.
Well, I tell you, sometimes it doesn't when you're setting up a studio to record a live show, but that's another story. We'll have to do outtakes. It'll be great. But anyway, I'm yabbering. Let's stop yabbering.
How much is the Gruner?
About 13 quid, about 14 quid for the Merlot, and then when we talk about the English wines, the double hedges, which is the Bacchus, 17, the Simpsons, 17 as well, and then the Hush Heath, a little bit more time and oak, touch more premium, touch more elegant, up at 25. So, you know, a little bit more money, but still absolutely delicious, and I feel...
And that's because oak is expensive.
And if you bought a Burgundy at that price...
Oh, that would be,
you'd be blown away. If that's so don't get scared about the price. If you love it, drink it.
Yeah, it's definitely a treat yourself wine. I drink that Simpsons far more than I should at that £17, but get that. That's a great one just to have.
Exactly.
So we now should go back to our ridiculous competition that this gentleman here thought up earlier. Sheep drinking wine. Well, to be fair, again, 2020 could happen.
I never said the sheep would drink the wine. I said they would get the wine.
Okay, fair.
They don't have to. They could be an investment.
I did like the joke that they would barely get any.
Yes. Yous guys.
Yeah, so well done for punning in the chat. Top
So
marks.
anyway, so we had some guesses that ranged from 0, very sad sheep,
Yep.
to 100, very, very drunk sheep.
Very drunk sheep.
And it was somewhere between those numbers. So the
Go on, put us out of misery.
number was 14.34, but as I'm a believer that you can't have a third of a bottle of wine,
that's fair.
14 is our winning answer, and our winner was Tristan.
Tristan. Oh, okay, fantastic. I think probably we'll also have some of those runners up as well, and it's going to take us a little bit of time just to go through
Just
the
to check
and
the numbers.
and we'll get in touch with you to give you the referral free gift. And if you haven't heard from us and you are pretty convinced that you had entered a number close to 14, then please just let us know.
Yes, if you entered 0, it's not you.
No, not
if you entered 97, it's not you. But so I'm guessing if you're anywhere between about 11 and 15, you might be in that top 5, just from what we're seeing at the moment. We just want to make sure we don't miss anyone. But those
Maybe
are some
that's the
winners.
winners
The
of the
real
wine.
winners of the day.
Yeah.
Is us. No.
Well, I
not
think
us.
I hope we've all won. Oh, that's cliched, isn't it?
I
No,
know,
I
it's
genuinely, I really enjoyed all of those wines tonight, and I'm glad because otherwise I'd be angry with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, before we announce these winners, what absolutely amazes me is the spread of the vote.
Yeah.
And obviously we voted on these before we knew what the prices were or the context of those kind of thing. And it was just like which ones we liked. And I think that's hugely important. And every single vote, and we'll break it down, is a 40-something to 50-something. There's not a 70-30, there's not an 80-20. It's all really, really
Seriously
close. Which just shows that people have different palates, different tastes,
Yeah.
we like different things.
But
and
you
not
see the strength
one's
of the opinions
right,
as
wrong,
well.
indifferent.
It's
So-
like people have different taste buds. I know it's a cliche, but there's your demonstration of it. People absolutely adored The Simpsons and didn't quite so much enjoy The Hush Heath, or thought that The Hush Heath had got something really special and The Simpsons wasn't. So yeah, so the first challenge was of the New Zealand wines, the Gruner versus the Merlot. Go on, put us out of misery.
Red versus white.
Red versus
not-
white.
Not the most overly fair comparison, but a comparison nonetheless. And the Merlot came on top with 53% of the vote.
53.
When we compared if you preferred Chardonnay or Bacchus, which I was very surprised by this.
Yeah.
I love the Bacchus, but it's definitely a slightly different style.
Yeah.
Chardonnay came out on top, but only 55 to 45.
That's crazy.
When,
that is crazy.
When we picked between our two Chardonnays, it was even bloody closer.
I can see the numbers, but I can't see who won.
So it was 49 to 51. So that's as close as
so
you
presumably
get.
that's one person.
So if someone didn't vote out there, this proves all votes count.
That's
All
true.
the time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Very important. No politics.
Yeah. So by saying that the most popular
He's
wine
looking
of the
smug,
evening
I can see
was
that.
the one that I may have said I thought was
Oh.
great. The Hush Heath was the most popular wine of the night. So to sum up, if I say it's great, you probably think it's great. No,
No.
But anyway,
But-
thank you very much. Clive's had a great night.
Yeah,
Tristan
fantastic.
said it's first class. I just want to check if that came in the comments before or after we announced him as the winner. Anne-Marie's loving the packaging. We're loving it too, which is really exciting. When are we opening it up? It's going to be Friday.
the
But can we
official
do something
day
for these people?
The official day is Friday, but assuming that I can get the website to work, actually it turns out even in 2020, not guaranteed. But
You made
yeah,
the
we
internet
will.
comment about me.
I did. I know.
Shocking.
That's come back to bite me. But yes, if we can get it open up Thursday evening, we'll open that up with all of the wines for sale as well, and with your ability to be in the very first subscribers to this cool club, and then you can join us every month. The following ones are going to be perhaps a little bit shorter than we've been tonight, but maybe just about an hour, when we polish these things and become a little bit more efficient at it.
I think so. I might just talk for 6 hours. But yes,
Or I can talk about chip budding for...
Chip budding, exactly. But anyway, so I think...
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. I'm going to stop talking now. But because we've done This Is a Production, we're now able to say... Roll credits!